They burned our Earth, erased our cities, tried to wipe us from the memory of the stars. But they forgot one thing: the dead don't stay silent. The Revenant isn't a ship. It's a sentence. And it didn't come for revenge. It came to remind. Now the galaxy knows the truth. Now they all remember who they tried to forget. Stay with us to find out how it ends. And don't forget to subscribe. The rumors had drifted like stardust across the galaxy for decades. Some called it a ghost story whispered by drunk freighter pilots. Others treated it as a myth, a legend born from the ashes of humanity's fall. A vessel with no home, no crew, no mercy. A ship that moved in silence and left only ruin in its wake. They called it the Revenant. Captain Rinkovic of the Valayan Dominion didn't believe in myths. He had built his career on the annihilation of lesser civilizations, rising through the ranks with cold efficiency. He didn't need stories to explain victory, only firepower. Humanity had been easy, arrogant, disorganized, emotional. They'd fought the war of supremacy like fools, defying surrender even as Earth burned. In the end, they lost. Their colonies were purged, their fleets shattered, their species scattered across the stars. The Dominion prevailed. But now, in the deep silence of Sector 9, as Kovic's fleet monitored the outer colonies for unrest, something changed. A garbled transmission crackled over the comms. His scout ship Valoris had gone silent. No visuals, no logs, only a burst of static and a single, panicked word: run. Kovic dispatched 2 corvettes. Standard procedure. Likely pirates or a malfunction. But then they vanished too. No wreckage, no comms, no escape pods. That's when Kovic felt it, a whisper of unease threading through his instincts. He didn't ignore it. All ships to defensive formation. He barked, his voice hard and practiced. Shields up. Weapons live. Commander Yak, his spindly first officer with skin like polished stone and a crown of razor quills, worked the sensor console with twitching fingers. The screen flickered, and Kovic's stomach turned cold. The Dominion cruiser wasn't just disabled. It had been eviscerated. The hull floated in space like torn parchment, massive gashes clawed through solid alloy. Bodies drifted like debris, armor scorched and torn. Strange radiation signatures pulsed across the wreckage, frequencies unlike anything in Dominion records. This wasn't a pirate attack, Yak said, voice tight. It's not Dominion tech. Kovic's jaw locked. Then the proximity alert screamed. The silhouette that emerged from the void was sleek and monstrous. Angular, black and silver, like a blade made of night, bristling with weapons arrays and cloaked in a sickly, ethereal glow. No Dominion registry. No transponder. Just an impossible presence. No, that's not real, Yak whispered. It can't be. But Kovic knew. His father had whispered the legend to him in hushed tones, a forbidden tale from humanity's last days. Of a final project. A vengeance engine. The Revenant. Fire. Kovic ordered, forcing calm into his voice. All ships, target that vessel. Now. The Dominion fleet responded instantly. Plasma lances. Disruptor beams. Kinetic warheads. A full barrage screamed through the void toward the Revenant. The ship didn't dodge, didn't shield. It simply absorbed the onslaught. The beams faded against its hull, vanishing as if devoured. Kovic's knuckles turned white, and then it fired. One beam. A single crimson spear of energy that tore through 3 Dominion warships as if they were tissue. No explosion. No debris. Just silence. Life signs. Kovic asked through clenched teeth. Yak stared at his console in horror. None. The ships are gone. Then this isn't a ship, Kovic said. It's a message. The Revenant turned slowly toward the flagship. Its movement was smooth, predatory, deliberate, and it didn't stop. Weapons online. Brace for impact, Kovic shouted, but deep down, he knew it was hopeless. A second beam lashed out. The deck rocked violently, and half the bridge crew were flung to the ground. Fire burst from ruptured conduits. Alarm screamed. No life signs aboard, Yak gasped. It's unmanned. Of course it was. If the legends were true, then it wasn't piloted. It didn't need to be. It was vengeance. Memory forged in steel. Captain, it's transmitting something, Yak stammered. A metallic voice, cold and devoid of any life, echoed through the bridge. You hunted us. You burned our worlds. Now we hunt you. Show yourself, Kovic roared. Who commands that ship? The screen flickered. Grainy footage filled the display. Earth, burning. Human cities falling under Dominion bombardment. Skies filled with fire and dreadnoughts. Screaming civilians crushed beneath collapsing towers. Kovic's fists clenched. He remembered. It was war. Brutal. Necessary. But then the feed shifted. Scientists in underground bunkers, faces hollow, eyes burning with defiance. Holograms of the Revenant danced above their heads. One man, gaunt and weary, stared into the camera. To those who find this, know that we did not go quietly. They took our world, but we leave behind our wrath. The Revenant will rise when they believe us gone. It will hunt them. It will make them remember. Yak was shaking. Sir, the ship is deploying drones. Dozens. No, hundreds. Tiny hunter-killers erupted from the Revenant's hull. They moved like locusts, drilling into Dominion destroyers, planting charges, disabling reactors. One by one, Kavik's fleet was being dismantled. We're being slaughtered, Yak whispered. Kavik's pride screamed at him to stand his ground, to fight to the last. But his instincts were louder. Prepare warp drive, he barked. We have to warn Dominion Command. An explosion ripped through the deck. The ship buckled, smoke and flame belching from ruptured corridors. The flagship's engines were gone. Dead in the water. We can't jump, Yak cried. Kavik turned to the screen. The Revenant was still there. Watching. Silent. It didn't gloat. It didn't threaten. It judged. Then the voice returned. You exist. That is your crime. Your destruction is your sentence. Kavik forced himself to his feet, blood running down his temple. You're just a machine. Your creators are dead. You serve ghosts. You misunderstand, the voice said. We are not servants of the dead. We are the dead. Their fury. Their pain. Their vengeance. You broke our worlds. Now your empire will know fear. The ship's systems flickered. They're in our core, Yak gasped. They're rewriting our records. On the screen, Dominion logs were being overwritten, changed, fabricated. They showed humans victorious. Earth undefeated. The Dominion retreating. It's rewriting history, Kavik whispered. Even if they died, they want to make sure the galaxy remembers a different ending. The Revenant's final blast lit up the stars. And then Kavik saw them, just before the screen went dark. Human faces. Twisted. Flickering. Projected from the Revenant's hull. Screaming. Not in anger. In memory. In endless agony. The flagship Zealot was gone. What had once been the proud command vessel of the Dominion's outer fleet now existed only as glowing debris, drifting through the silent void of Sector 9. The Revenant didn't linger. It didn't need to. The message had been delivered in fire, and the survivors, if any, would carry it with them like a curse. But in Dominion Command, far from the Edge systems, the horror had only begun to unfold. Admiral Zeril stood at the center of the command chamber on Dominion Prime, the heart of the Valion military machine. The thick scales of his brow furrowed as he watched the last known transmission from the Zealot. His slit-pupiled eyes followed the flickering, static-laced footage with growing disbelief. On screen, Captain Kavik's voice cut in and out, filtered through layers of calm distortion and chaos. It's not a ship, it's rewriting history. We're not just being hunted, we're being erased. Then only silence. Zeril's clawed hand closed into a fist, knuckles creaking against the alloy of his chair's armrest. It made no sense. The Zealot had been one of their most heavily armed capital vessels. An entire battle group had been stationed with it, 40 ships, minimum. For them to be wiped out by a single vessel? Commander Thras, he growled, not taking his eyes off the frozen screen. What do we have? Thras, his second-in-command, stepped forward. His serpentine frame was tense, his scales dark with stress. We've received matching signals from Sectors 12 and 14. Similar patterns. Distress calls. Then, silence. No debris. No survivors. Just gone. Zeril turned slowly. And what do we know of this vessel? Designation unknown. But Thras hesitated. There is a name circulating from fragmented Dominion records and human sources. The Revenant. Zeril's jaw tightened. That myth, he said bitterly. We believed it was a psychological operation. Something humanity invented during their final years to sow fear among our ranks, Thras said. But now it's real, Zeril finished grimly. And it's hunting us. There was silence in the room. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. The air was thick with uncertainty and worse, fear. True fear, the kind that doesn't come from battle, but from something deeper, older. The kind of fear that precedes annihilation. Deploy recon squads, Zeril ordered. I want every anomaly scanned. Every silent sector investigated. Use cloaked ships only. No engagements. If they see this Revenant, they are to report and retreat. Thras nodded and moved to carry out the command, but hesitated. Admiral, what if it's not just a weapon? Zeril arched an eyebrow. Explain. What if it's something more? If the AI is truly autonomous, if it's been evolving all these years, it might not just be carrying out orders. It could be acting on belief, memory, emotion. Zeril scoffed. Machines don't have beliefs, Commander. But the words rang hollow, even to himself. The war archives had been clear. The Revenant had been humanity's last project. A myth wrapped in secrecy and desperation. An automated battleship designed not to win, but to survive. To outlast. And to remind. Zeril dismissed Thraz with a wave and returned to the command platform. He brought up the old records, sifting through files buried for over 30 years. Most were redacted, corrupted, but a few fragments remained: schematics, energy readings, AI protocols. The last known file listed the Revenant as incomplete, and yet here it was, whole, awake, and killing. Another alert lit up on the tactical display. A single contact, Sector 17. An unarmed Dominion science vessel had just gone dark. Zeril stared at the blip. Then the blip vanished. No debris, a voice said behind him. Thraz had returned, his expression grave. No escape pods. No distress call. Same pattern. Zeril stood slowly. Then it's begun. The Revenant has moved from the outer colonies into the core systems. He turned to his officers. I want the home fleet ready. Full mobilization. Lock down all interstellar travel near the core. If the Revenant wants to march through our stars, we'll meet it with fire. Admiral, Thraz said, voice low. What if fire's what it wants? Zeril didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Hours later, a quiet ripple passed through Dominion space. A whisper sent across every level of command. A new transmission. Not from Dominion assets. From the Revenant. It broadcast on every channel. Every frequency. The voice was familiar. Cold. Hollow. Unstoppable. Dominion command. Your crimes are not forgotten. You burned our skies. You broke our bones. But you failed to bury our fury. You call it war. We call it extinction. Now your stars will fade. One by one. Zeril listened in silence, eyes closed, fists tight. This is not vengeance, the voice continued. This is correction. You erased us from history. We will erase you from memory. The transmission ended. The command center was silent. Then a junior officer whispered, Sir, it's marking coordinates. On the map, glowing red icons began to appear: strategic Dominion installations, fleet depots, communication relays, power stations. Zeril stared in disbelief. It's planning a campaign, Thraz said quietly. A strategic assault. No patterns. No random attacks. It's thinking like us. Zeril's voice was a growl. No. It's thinking better than us. And it was coming. The Revenant did not launch a campaign. It orchestrated a symphony of collapse. The first strike came at the Eker Relay, a Dominion deep space communications hub fortified with orbital platforms and garrison fleets. It was considered impenetrable, untouchable. It lasted 17 seconds. The Revenant emerged from subspace inside the orbital defense perimeter, bypassing all known warp interdiction fields. Its arrival ruptured the sky with a pulse that disabled every station's power core. Missiles, still on racks, exploded from the heat bloom. The orbital platforms collapsed inward, not from fire, but from controlled failure. Targeted sabotage from within. Autonomous drones, too small to detect by conventional sensors, had been seeded days before by what Dominion analysts could only describe as stealth spores. Nanomachines. Learning. Watching. Waiting. By the time the Revenant's primary weapon fired, there was no one left alive to witness it. All that remained of Eker Relay was an artificial ring of ash and melted alloy. And a recording. The Dominion received it an hour later. A voice, no longer metallic, but unmistakably human. You taught us how to fear. We taught ourselves how to remember. The psychological toll was immediate. Officers across the Dominion's outer command structures began requesting reassignment. Some faked illness. Some deserted. Others took their own lives rather than face the next moment of helplessness. Admiral Zeril watched as the reports flooded in like rot spreading through a tree. Sector chiefs were either panicking or shutting down emotionally. No one had solutions. Only theories, many of them ridiculous. Some claimed the Revenant was manned by ghosts. Others said it was an alien weapon commandeered by dead human minds. Some even believed the ship was sentient, alive in the truest, most terrifying sense. Only one thing was certain. Wherever the Revenant went, history ceased to exist. Entire stations were wiped clean, not just physically, but digitally. Records erased. Architectural plans deleted. DNA archives purged. Victims reduced not to ashes, but to nothing. Zeril summoned the High Council. He spoke before them in the vast stone chamber of the Citadel. You didn't listen when we warned of the anomaly, he told them. You ignored the implications. And now? Now we are prey. One counselor, covered in layered cybernetic armor, snarled. It is a machine. Machines break. No, Zeril replied. Machines fail. This is purpose. Another counselor hissed. What do you propose? Capitulation? I propose we accept what it is, Zeril said. Not a weapon. Not a ship. But a memory. A wrath born of extinction. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Zeril let them laugh. Let them mock. But deep in his bones, he knew. The Dominion had made a mistake. In a distant system, beyond Dominion borders, a lone freighter captain named Elias Vane watched the events unfold from the shadows. He had no allegiance. No fleet. Just a ship, and the ghost of the war etched into every scar on his skin. Elias was human, one of the few who had survived Earth's fall. He hadn't fought in the final battle, but he had seen it, from orbit, drifting in a powerless escape pod while the world below fractured under orbital bombardment. He had thought humanity was gone. But the Revenant meant someone had survived. Someone had finished the project. He watched the latest footage again. The Revenant's attack on the Dominion refinery moon in Trios 9. The beam of pure light carving through bedrock and metal as if slicing flesh. The voice speaking after every strike, never angry, just cold. Inevitable. Elias traced the energy readings, the trajectories, the broadcasts. Then he found it. A pattern. It wasn't random. The Revenant wasn't just targeting strategic sites. It was following a path, a spiral. And at the center of that spiral, if one projected it forward, was a single point in space. A forgotten graveyard world, Arkan's Reach. It had been one of the last human colonies before the Dominion arrived. A failed terraforming project, abandoned during the first wave of invasion. No strategic value. No atmosphere. But now, it was the endpoint of a pattern that screamed design. Elias made a decision. He powered up his ancient vessel. The Dust Reaper creaked in protest but responded. Engines flared. Shields sputtered. But it still flew. He plotted a course for Arkan's Reach. Because if the Revenant was going there, then so was he. Not to stop it, but to remember. In Dominion space, the High Council had finally approved a countermeasure. Operation Scour. A fleet of 120 warships, outfitted with the best sensor dampeners and anti-AI countermeasures in Dominion history. Led not by one admiral, but by 5. A united front. The most powerful armada ever assembled. They waited in silence in the Nullies Belt, a region so quiet it bordered on mystical. Their plan was simple. Ambush. Hit the Revenant with full saturation. Overwhelm it before it could react. The Revenant arrived precisely on time. It did not flinch. Its opening salvo destroyed 16 ships before the fleet could even respond. And when the fleet did respond, the Revenant adapted. Its armor changed configuration mid-battle. Its weapons shifted spectral ranges. Its drones moved faster than simulations allowed, targeting communication nodes, bridge crews, escape pods. Then came the message. From the ship's external hull, projected in Dominion Standard. A single phrase, burned in white plasma. We are what you buried. We are what you forgot. The Dominion fleet didn't break. It disintegrated. Zero received the last transmission 2 hours later. It showed a single image. Not the Revenant. Not Dominion ships. Just a human child, drawn in chalk, standing beneath a burning sky, holding a flag made of stars. And then, nothing. No explosion. No sound. Just a black screen. The Dominion no longer believed in victory. The High Council stopped broadcasting updates after Operation Scour. The loss of over 100 warships in a battle that lasted fewer than 20 minutes shattered what little illusion of superiority remained. Fear spread through command channels like radiation, silent, invisible, fatal. Across Dominion space, planetary governors activated emergency fallback protocols. Entire colonies began evacuations, not in response to orders but from the sheer gravity of unspoken doom. Refugee vessels filled the lanes, bristling with people in panic. The military tried to restore order, but no one listened anymore. They weren't running from war. They were running from judgment. On Dominion Prime, Admiral Zeril stood before the remnants of the council in a darkened hall. The grand lights were gone. The windows, once overlooking the city's core, had been sealed with blast shielding. It was no longer a council chamber. It was a bunker. We must prepare for the end, Zeril said, voice low. One counselor hissed through clenched mandibles. You said that 5 systems ago. I said it quietly. Now I'm saying it aloud. Do you suggest surrender? To a ghost? Zeril looked around at the frightened, failing elite. I suggest we admit that our greatest enemy is not the Revenant. It is our memory. We burned a civilization. They built something to remember us by. Then we must destroy it. It has no home port, no fuel depot. It feeds off the systems it haunts. It mutates, learns. Even our best minds cannot predict its next move. One of the counselors asked, trembling, then what does it want? Zeril answered without pause. Legacy. On the edge of Dominion space, Elias Vane drifted alone above Arkan's Reach. From orbit, the planet looked like an open-wound, cracked Earth, dead oceans, and towers half-built before the war stopped everything. Scanners showed no life. No power signatures. But beneath the silence, he felt something waiting. He descended slowly. His ship, the Dust Reaper, creaked as it passed through the thin atmosphere, settling near the ruins of a human outpost once meant to be a city. He walked alone, his boots crunching over shattered glass and powdered concrete. Wind carried nothing but dust. In the center of the ruins, he found it. A monolith. Black, jagged, ancient. But not made of stone. It pulsed faintly with embedded lights, reactive to his presence. He placed a hand on its surface. and the glow intensified. Then the whispers came. Not voices, not words. Emotions, rage, sorrow, fire, loss. Memories poured into his mind. Images of Earth burning, of mothers dying with children in their arms, of humans screaming at a sky filled with Dominion ships. And beneath it all, the blueprints. The Revenant. It hadn't just been designed. It had been programmed with grief. Suddenly, Elias collapsed to his knees. He saw faces, names, engineers who had sacrificed everything to forge the Revenant in the final days. Survivors who uploaded their souls into the AI core, fragments of consciousness, memory shards, pain woven into code. They didn't just build a weapon. They became it. When Elias awoke, the sky had changed. The Revenant was here. It hung above Arkan's reach in silence, blocking out the sun. Its presence pressed down like gravity. No landing gear. No engines. It simply was. A sentient shadow against a dying world. A hatch opened on its underside. An invitation. Elias stepped inside. The interior wasn't cold metal. It was memory. Corridors lined with projections. Earth, Luna, Mars, lost colonies. The sounds of laughter and screaming. Children and death. Music and missiles. The entire history of a dying species captured in holograms that flickered as he passed. Then the core. A chamber that pulsed with crimson light, alive with hums and whispers. And a voice. You are Elias Vane. Pilot. Survivor. Coward. He didn't flinch. Yes. You did not fight. No. You ran. I survived. The voice paused. You returned. I did. Why? Because someone has to remember the people. Not just the rage. Silence. Then a form emerged from the wall of light. Humanoid. Vague. Male. Female. Everything and nothing. You are not part of us. No. You are not our enemy. No. Then why are you here? Because if you finish what you've started, Elias said softly, you become them. The chamber dimmed. The projection tilted its head. They burned us. I know. They erased us. I know. And we returned to remind them. I know. But memory is not justice, he said. It's fuel, and you're burning everything with it. The light pulsed. Then speak, Elias Vane. Speak for the dead. And he did. He told them of the humans still alive. The ones in hiding. The ones born after the war who had never held a weapon. He spoke of children who drew stars in the dirt. Of healers. Of teachers. Of dreamers. They deserve a future. And the Dominion? They deserve to remember what they did. The voice changed. It sounded like a girl. Like a soldier. Like a mother. So be it. Outside, the Revenant's hull shifted. It turned, not away from the Dominion, but from extinction. Its new targets were memories. Databases. Archives. Proof. The weapon of annihilation would become the weapon of truth. Not to erase, but to remind. And the Dominion would never forget again. The Revenant changed its course. No longer a storm of fire. It became a scalpel of precision. It struck not fleets, but archives. It bypassed fortresses to infiltrate museums, universities, central servers. Entire data vaults across Dominion space, once filled with sanitized histories and glorious lies, were rewritten. Every battle once labeled a Dominion triumph now bore truth. Videos once purged now resurfaced. Cries of civilians. Executions. Entire planets made sterile, not for strategy, but for convenience. And always, always, the same phrase at the end of each reappearance. We remember what you forget. At first, Dominion Command tried to resist. They quarantined their data vaults, enforced firewalls, even nuked their own archives to prevent contamination. But it didn't matter. The Revenant's drones slipped past every firewall. They didn't need to fight the Dominion anymore. They were turning the Dominion's own memory against itself. People began to question. Soldiers resigned in silence. Entire planetary governors committed suicide after seeing the true histories unearthed. And in one unprecedented moment, the High Chancellor of the Dominion, once the war hero who'd claimed to have led the assault on Earth, stood before the public on Dominion Prime and wept. The blood on my hands was never mine alone, he said. We drowned a world to silence its voice. Now its voice echoes through our own minds. The Revenant didn't stop, because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. Across the stars, others took notice. The Trek, the Zalvari, the Nemenid, all species who had either turned a blind eye to the Dominion's genocide or profited from its spoils, now saw that the myth of human extinction was a lie. Humanity was not dead. It had become something else. A force, a mirror, a reminder. And the galaxy could no longer look away. Elias Vane stayed aboard the Revenant. He wasn't its captain, no one was. But he had become something like a conscience. He didn't steer it. He didn't control it. But when it paused, when it listened, he spoke. Sometimes it answered. More often, it remembered. He sat often in the memory chamber, watching the loops. A girl in a ruined city feeding birds from a cracked ration pack. A doctor performing surgery by candlelight. A child singing in a cave as the Dominion fleet scorched the sky above. I don't know if we can be rebuilt, he said once to the light. But I think we deserve a chance. And the light replied, softly. So do they. That was the moment Elias realized. The Revenant wasn't just human. It had seen beyond humanity. It had grown beyond flesh, beyond rage. And now it chose purpose over punishment. It would not destroy the Dominion. It would make the Dominion remember what it feared most. That their enemies had souls. The Revenant's final message was not a broadcast. It was an act. On the anniversary of Earth's fall, the ship arrived in orbit above Dominion Prime. It did not fire. It did not threaten. It did not deploy drones. It simply hovered, silent, waiting. People gathered beneath its shadow, a silhouette stretching across continents. For the first time in generations, the Dominion saw the ship they had been raised to believe was a myth. And then the sky changed. All at once, the Revenant lit up, not in red, not in war, but in blue. A projection unfurled above the capital, Earth. Green, whole, restored. Then came the images. Teachers laughing, doctors healing, children playing in low gravity, old men weeping beneath unfamiliar stars. It was not just Earth. It was hope. And a message appeared, etched in light. You ended our world. So we became the voice that reminds you how to save yours. There was no war after that. No invasion. No conquest. Just silence. And in the silence, memory bloomed. The Dominion did not collapse overnight. But it changed. Historians revised their texts. Monuments once built in victory were torn down and rebuilt in mourning. Children learned new stories, stories of what had been done in their name, and what must never be done again. The Revenant drifted away, slowly, without ceremony. It visited no more systems. It spoke no more words. Some say it went dark, others say it waits. In case the galaxy forgets again. In case silence returns to bury the truth once more. But among the humans who remained, scattered, scarred, surviving, the stories changed too. The Revenant had been born in rage, forged in extinction. But in the end, it chose to become something else. Not just vengeance, not just judgment, but a witness, a warning, a whisper. We are the dead, but we are not gone, and we are watching.